Good morning. Welcome to Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. Very excited about being here with you today. It is Wednesday, 9 a.m. For all of my West Coast folks, good early morning to you, 6 a.m. West Coast time. To everybody in the Central and the Mountain time zone, it's time to get in where you fit in. Today, I want to continue on the theme of the content that we have been sharing in our first and national research study around workplace mistreatment, or what we call workplace injustice. Workplace injustice is having a devastating social impact and an economic impact on businesses. Those impacts are wide ranging from a financial standpoint. I mean, to the tune of almost $1 trillion. We're talking about $914 billion a year is the economic impact of injustice in the workplace. Now, when I say injustice, I've explained on several previous casts about what different types of injustice impact the workplace, whether it's ostracism, whether it's verbal abuse, whether it's outright harassment, or what we call bystander behavior. That is, you see stuff going wrong, but you sit by and let it happen. And so today, I want to focus on supervisors in the workplace. Now, when I say supervisor, I'm talking about the person who you directly report to or the persons who report directly to you. We all have a supervisor at some level. Sometimes it might be the CEO reporting to a board, or it might be a C-level executive reporting to the CEO, or anywhere else in the organization. A director, has direct reports. A manager has direct reports. Sometimes it's even a frontline supervisor. It doesn't matter how low on the totem pole or how high on the totem pole, supervisor mistreatment is happening in the workplace, and it has some devastating effects. Now, when I say devastating effects, I'm really talking about unseen consequences. These are things that you don't necessarily see them on the bottom line of your profit and loss statement. I mean, they are there. I will tell you that they are there. But so many people don't think about them first and foremost when we think about a profit and loss. When we think about profit, we think about how much revenue are we generating quarter over quarter, year over year, month over month, et cetera, et cetera. So what are we generating from the sales of our products and services? When we think about losses, we think about, well, what did we lose money on? That we lost money because we tried a new project and it failed, or we bought too much inventory and had to throw it away. We think about those things as loss. But I'm going to talk today about some of the unseen consequences that happen and that are costing you not only money, but are costing you talent, capital, reputational risk. It's costing so many things to your organization because of how your supervisors treat the people in the workplace. Now, so I want to unpack this. And before I do, let me spell out what supervisor mistreatment looks like, because sometimes we could think it's not supervisor mistreatment when it really is supervisor mistreatment. And so in order to be able to do that, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. These are real life human examples of people who have experienced this in their workplace environment. These are the stories that come to me. And when I mean come to me, I wish I could let you all see the direct messages that I receive on LinkedIn, the direct messages that I receive on Facebook from people about their stories of what happened in the workplace. And just last week, I had a senior level executive. This person reported to a CEO, accepted a job because the organization looked great on the surface, the culture looked great, the role looked like a great fit. So they came onto the team and were onto the team, and the CEO decides that we need to do some team building activities for his executive team. So what does this CEO do? He tells everyone that they're going on a field trip. They get together and they go on a field trip to a cemetery. Now, I want you to think about that. You heard me right. A CEO takes his senior team on a team bonding, team building activity to a cemetery. Now, some of you might say, well, maybe he was trying to get them to say that this is where good ideas, go to die, or this is, some kind of metaphorical phrase for being in a cemetery. But I want you to know that if you haven't done deep investigations to know who's on your team, what they care about, their life experiences, what's going on with them in their lives, to take someone to a cemetery could be triggering in all kinds of ways. All kinds of ways. Bad ways, really bad ways. You don't know if people have phobias about death. You don't know if they just had a near-death scare, or maybe they lost their spouse or a parent or a child in the previous weeks. So it makes no difference to me why you think this was a good idea. That was a bad idea. One of the worst ideas, but not the worst idea that I've heard. But that's an aspect of creating an environment that people don't feel like they can trust or respect their supervisor. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me give you a couple of other examples of what supervisor mistreatment looks like. This is the one that we all know exists, and that is favoritism. That you got 4 people that directly report to you, and one of those persons, no matter what they do, they're always wrong. And another one of those persons, no matter what they do, they're never wrong. You always give them the benefit of the doubt. Another aspect of supervisor mistreatment is unfair evaluations. And I'm going to give you a real life circumstance of this one. I was working with an organization where they were having a very high turnover rate in this particular position. And it was a healthcare organization. I'm going to just go ahead and tell you, I'm going to give you some color on this one. It was a healthcare organization. The positions that were high turnover were in phlebotomy. So these are like entry-level healthcare roles. They pay good money, but these are the people who draw blood every time you go into a hospital or a clinic. So these people have some level of skill because they got to learn how to stick a needle in the right way and not hurt people and not cause problems, but be able to do what they do it painless, quickly, effectively, and most importantly, that keeps the patient at ease. So phlebotomy is a very important role. They're really a front line. They deal with customers and patients every day. So this department has significant turnover, like at least 50% turnover. And I kept hearing stories about how it was so bad to work on this team. So I start to do some investigation on behalf of the organization. And what I learned is that the manager, the supervisor of this department, was one of the most hostile and toxic individuals possible. Let me give you a little bit more color. The team was mostly women of color, and the person who was in a supervisory role was older and white. Now, generally speaking, that's not a problem in any workplace whatsoever, but in this workplace, this supervisor would say things that would draw the lines around race of everything, using terms like, why do y'all do that? Why do y'all dress like that? Why do y'all live in this community? And it was all kinds of stuff that was drawing a solid line. But then there were more things beyond that. The way she would call people out in team meetings, pit people against each other, literally would come in and do a one-on-one with people and say, so how's it going working with such and such? And the person says, well, working with such and such is good, but they were out sick last week and it made it hard on me because I had more work I had to do or more patients I had to see. And this supervisor would then call in the employee that was out sick the last week and say stuff like this: your colleagues don't like you. They don't think you carry your own weight, that they're doing your work, doing double time of your work because you just ain't good enough and you ain't never here. Not any empathy or any understanding or even acknowledgement that that person was really out sick for a reason. Now, I know I'm probably, giving an example that you've never heard of or never felt before, but I really want you to know that this is real talk. This is a real example of a supervisor pitting people against each other, saying all kinds of racially tinged, racially biased statements on their team. And so the team is where I was spending most of my time, not even with the leader yet. So I said to the team, what y'all should do is to be honest on the next employee evaluation. Really be transparent about your experiences. If you don't be honest about what you're going through, you can't get better. The leader, you're afraid to give that leader feedback around what they're doing. So this team said, okay, we're going to listen to you, Mr. Gunn. We're going to give feedback at the next evaluation period. The next evaluation period comes in a few months. They give their feedback, and it was honest feedback. And as the evaluations came back, the organization called me back in to be able to go through. I used to do a lot of what I call leadership meetings for people who are supervisors before they do their employee engagement meetings with their employees to talk about the scores. They wanted me to prep the supervisors. So I come back in to get ready to do this meeting for the supervisors, and I asked in particular about this department. And turns out that this leader was given the lowest rating for all supervisors. They had them in tiers. You had tier 1 leaders, tier 2 leaders, and tier 3 leaders. Tier 1 leaders were the best of the best. Tier 2 needed some work but weren't too bad. But tier 3 were terrible leaders, leaders who were failing. And if you were a tier 3 leader more than 2 years in a row, this organization would literally work to remove you from your position. Say you're not supervisory material. And I think that's an okay decision, because 2 years in a row of bad scores mean you're not making any improvement unless you can show that you went from a bad score of a 50 to a bad score of a 75 and you're trying to get it up to 100. That might be the case. But other than that, 2 years of bad scores is bad scores. But what I didn't know was that this leader, whose employees I told to be honest, this was not her first year of bad scores. This was literally her second year of bad scores. So she was on the verge of losing her position because of her bad employee engagement scores. But did this leader try to get better? No, let me tell you what she did. And this is going to help you to understand what supervisor mistreatment looks like. This leader called a staff meeting of all of her employees when she got her scores. And she literally said to every last one of her team members, because y'all gave me a bad evaluation, I'm going to start writing people up and get rid of most of y'all, because I don't want to work with a team who's willing to give their boss a bad evaluation. So she says out loud to a team of employees that she's not going to be objective or fair in the evaluation of them, that she's just going to start writing people up to get rid of them in the workplace, because she wants people on her team that will have her back and not be honest and give her feedback. I want you to know that this type of mistreatment happens every day in some organization. Now, as you're sitting here listening to me, I suspect you know somebody who has experienced that. If you have, please let me know. If you are going through this, please say so. But God forbid, do not be the leader who is doing this to your team. Because if you are doing this to your team, I'm going to share very quickly the unseen consequences that are happening right in your organization that's costing you so much that you can't even see. And that's why you got to turn it around. And I'm going to tell you what you're going to do about it, or what you should do about it. So let's jump right in. Here are the 5 unseen consequences of supervisor mistreatment in the workplace. Number 1 is the decline in mental health. Now, when I say the decline in mental health, what I want you to understand is that people who experience untreatment like this in the workplace start to not feel good about themselves. They start to second guess themselves. They have low self-esteem. Sometimes they could even feel trapped, that they need their job, they need the paycheck, they need what they're doing. They love the people that they work with, but because of this mistreatment, they feel like that they can't take it. I literally had employees tell me, like literally right after George Floyd was killed, that they weren't George Floyd, but they felt like their supervisor had a knee on their neck. Like, these are the things that people said, that I can't breathe at work. I'm stressed at work. Stress and anxiety are not good things. And we just came off of, a couple of mental health months. May, mental health. June is Men's Mental Health Month. I'm telling you right now that if you have supervisors who are mistreating team members, there's a decline in mental health in your organization. So I want to ask you, have you seen employees file more, employee assistant claims, have more challenges at work, act out at work, seem sullen, they don't engage as much anymore? It could be because of supervisor mistreatment. Now, the second unseen consequence of supervisor mistreatment is decreased job satisfaction. Now, when I say decreased job satisfaction, people show up to work because they are choosing to show up to work. They don't necessarily have to work in this industry or work for your organization. They might love their jobs, but over time, because of how they're being treated, there's going to be a decline in job satisfaction. That decline in job satisfaction is going to affect their morale, it's going to affect their productivity, and it could lead to turnover. Now, productivity has an economic impact. We all know that. That's why we track everything that employees do, because we want to know if they're being productive. So if you got poor job satisfaction because of supervisor mistreatment, guess what? It's going to affect your bottom line. It's going to lead to turnover. I'm going to come back and talk about turnovers in a second, because our State of Workplace Injustice report laid out very clearly the economic impact of turnover in an organization. But the second one is, again, decreased job satisfaction. The third one is the erosion of trust and the decline of team cohesion in your organization. See, when people get mistreated by a supervisor and they don't know what to do about it and they don't believe they have anywhere to go with it, they stop trusting their supervisor, but they stop trusting the organization for letting this go on and doing nothing about it. And a lack of trust in an organization is a broken organization. See, it takes a long time to build trust, but it only takes one moment, one incident, one situation to destroy that trust. And without trust, there's no transparency. And people won't speak up and tell you what they're doing, what they're dealing with, what challenges they have. So a lack of trust leads to a lack of communication. A lack of communication leads to a lack of team cohesion. It leads to a place where people are working together, but they're not working as a team. And we all know what teamwork means in an organization. Very few people work in a silo these days. We all work on teams. And so if your team cohesion is declining, it could be because of supervisor mistreatment. So you need to evaluate what's going on with your supervisors and your teams in your organization. Now, number 4, I'm going to give it to you this way. This is the one that a lot of people don't really want to admit is attached to it. And that is absenteeism and turnover at work. So when I say absenteeism as turnover, we know that people take off sick days, and sometimes they're sick, sometimes they have illnesses, sometimes they have things that happen. But I can give you some real world examples of people who were out sick, not because they were really sick. They were just sick of you, their toxic, mistreating supervisor, that they literally called in sick and took a mental health day, or I got a cold. I've even had people say they had COVID so they wouldn't have to go to work because they don't want to be around bad people, toxic leaders who are horrible. So I'm telling you right now that there is a lot of supervisor mistreatment going on in the workplace, an incredible amount of supervisor mistreatment. And so that will make employees leave when they don't really feel like being there. They will make them take sick days when they're not really sick. And so this turnover and absenteeism has a significant economic cost to organizations. And I want you to know right now that we have to do something about it. There's a lot of things that we can do about it, and I'm going to give you those in a second. But just know absenteeism is real. I know one person who got a medical note from a physician to take 4 weeks off of work because of stress, because of how she was being treated by a supervisor on their team. This is real stuff, real difficult stuff. So let me give you number 5, and then I'm going to tell you the 4 things that we need to do about supervisor mistreatment. And I'm going to wrap up. Number 5 is that supervisor mistreatment can lead to damage of your company's reputation. Your organizational reputation is in a ditch and you don't even know it. People bad-mouthing you on social media sites. They got fake online identities telling people, don't shop here, don't work here, don't buy from this company, don't do anything with this company. They mistreat their people bad. Yeah, your employees are saying this. And it's making it harder for you to recruit new people. Because let me tell you, word gets around very fast when you are mistreating people in the workplace. It gets around quickly, quicker than you can imagine. And don't let it get so bad that your company ends up on the front page of the newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, for the toxic culture that you created because you got one leader who is severely toxic. Even the FDIC was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal recently because of how supervisors, particularly the leader of the FDIC, was treating people. He got called up on Capitol Hill about that. We've all seen it. So this is not about just like your front level person, but can be your CEO can be toxic, can get off on creating a kind of environment that makes people have bad mental health, that make them have low job satisfaction and absenteeism, or just leave the organization, and just the erosion of trust and team cohesion, and yes, badmouth you to the whole entire world. This is real stuff. So we need to address supervisor mistreatment. And so let me frame up with you the economic impact of this. According to our study in the state of workplace injustice, I will tell you that 66% of employees experience mistreatment, injustice at least once a year. 23% experience it every month. And it makes them disengage. It makes them quit the job and go work for somewhere else. And some of them even have what we call counterproductive workplace behaviors. So when I say counterproductive workplace behaviors, I'm talking about they steal copy paper. They use the Wi-Fi and give it to their kids to game at home. They badmouth the employer. They don't shop there. I mean, could you imagine employees who work at a bank, but because they hate the bank so much that they got all of their accounts with another bank? I mean, you don't have no trust in your employer. Could you imagine working for Netflix, but not have a Netflix account? Or just choosing not to engage? I mean, there are employees I know who work at Facebook who won't have a Facebook account, but they need their jobs. Their jobs pay well, and that's why they're still there. They hate their boss. They hate their supervisor. They don't like the executive team for how they treat people. They've heard the horror stories of how people have been run out of jobs. They hear all of these things, but they stay there because the organization is paying them well, or because they need the job. They got kids in school. They got a family member that got special needs. There's a lot of reason why people stay in the workplace, but it doesn't stop them from economically negatively impacting your company by disengaging, by bad-mouthing the company, by internally sabotaging stuff. Yeah, people do internal sabotage at work. Sometimes the person who acts out in meetings all the time to disrupt a meeting is because they're sick of being mistreated. And the only place that they feel safe at doing it is it messing up meetings. So these are the 5 unseen consequences. Let me recap them again, and I'm going to tell you the 4 quick things your organization needs to have critical in your books and your practices and your plan to make sure you mitigate this. So consequence number 1 of supervisor mistreatment is a decline in mental health. Number 2, a decrease in job satisfaction. Number 3, absenteeism and turnover. Number 4, lack of trust and a decline in team cohesion. And number 5, damaged organizational reputation. Those are the 5. Now, if this is your organization and you're having these challenges of how you're treating people in the organization, let me tell you what you need to do about it. I'm going to tell you very simply what you need to do about it. And it's 4 things. If you do these 4 things, you will minimize and mitigate the amount of mistreatment that happens in your workplace. And you'll build a world-class culture where people want to stay, where they love talking about their employer. They got high retention rates. They got low absenteeism rates. They got all of the right things in their organization. And these are the 4 things that you need to do. Number 1, you need to have crystal clear workplace policies around what happens when people do bad things at work. That everybody needs to know that if I get mistreated, here's where I go. This is how I report it. And this is what we know is inbounds or out of bounds in the workplace. When you don't have clear policies that everybody knows, you don't know if is this okay? Is this what we do around here? Or is this wrong? So you got to have clear policies. That's number 1. Number 2 is you need to train your leaders on how to be leaders that don't commit toxic behaviors. See, the reason why this is so important is because so many people are being promoted into management. They're being promoted into leadership roles. They're being put on senior level teams faster than ever before. But they're not ready to lead people. They might be good at the technical job. They might know the product or service that you sell or the area that they work in. And you say, oh, because they're good at the technical knowledge, let's just make them supervisor their whole department. But they don't know anything about people. They don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to engage with people in the workplace in a way that inspires them, empowers them, and motivates them. They just don't have any. They ain't read one leadership book. They haven't gone to Anton Gunn summer school and learned anything yet. That's a joke, but I'm serious. They don't know anything about leadership. Not leadership 101, much less leadership 400 that it takes to be a senior level leader in your organization. And I might be talking about you. You think because you got an MBA in 1997, you know all there is to know about leadership? Let me tell you, the American workplace has changed dramatically over the last 30 years. And if you're leading the same way that they taught you in business school in 1997, you are screwing up every single day and you don't even know it. You're damaging people every single day and don't even know it. So I want you to know you got to have training for your leaders, routine, regular training, quarterly leadership development sessions. And I'm not talking about 1-hour workshops either. I'm talking about like a full day every quarter where you invest in the development of yourself as a leader and you invest in the leaders that you lead. Something every quarter. Make sure that they're strong. They know how to have emotionally intelligent conversations. They got good emotional intelligence themselves. They know how to express empathy and understand empathy. They know how to coach and motivate and lead people, not just be managers, but to be mentors, not just be supervisors, but to be leaders. You got to focus on training your people. That's the second thing you need to be doing to mitigate the supervisor mistreatment. Now, the third thing is very simply, you need to have an open culture. You need to have a culture where people are unafraid to talk to each other about what they see, about what's going on, about the challenges that they have. They need to be able to evaluate in real time whether you have an open culture, whether you have a place where people are willing to talk about what's going on with the people in the workplace. You can't have this siloed, closed culture, which is nobody talks to that department, or we don't talk across lines, or I know stuff is screwed up over there in that division, but I'm not going to say nothing because it ain't my job. It ain't my responsibility. If you got people who say that ain't my job, it ain't my responsibility, it's above my pay grade, it's above me now. When they're saying those kind of things, you don't have an open culture where people feel like that they're all responsible for each other and they're all supportive of each other. So you got to find a way to address that. And I can help you with that. If you need some help with any of these things, again, please send me a direct message. I'm happy to try to at least have a conversation, of a strategy call of some sort to help you to get over some of these hurdles around not having an open culture. Okay. And the last thing is This is going to sound like something revolutionary. I'm going to just go ahead and look at you like this and say this. The last thing you can do to mitigate supervisor mistreatment in the workplace is to hold people accountable for the bad behaviors in the workplace. Hold people accountable. That's the biggest problem right there, is that we see people commit bad behavior and we do nothing about it. We let them just carry on for years of bad behavior. And in our study, we asked our respondents, did you report mistreatment or injustice when you experienced it? And basically, yes, everybody said they reported it. And 92% of them says that they felt no satisfaction after reporting it, because only 17% of organizations actually did something about the injustice. You got people doing bad things and nobody is doing anything about it. You're not holding people accountable. How do we exist? How do we think we're going to build a resilient culture, keep our best people, build great teams, and have a dynamic organization if we got bad actors at work and everybody sees it, everybody knows it, but nobody says anything and nobody does anything about it? That we don't hold that person accountable. We don't hold those leaders accountable. And I'm telling you, this is real. I mean, I've seen a CFO of a large organization with more than 10,000 employees be one of the most toxic people for the teams that reported up to them. I mean, horrible CFO. But they were great at the numbers. They were great at making sure cash flow and that the margins were growing. They were great at doing their job, but they were horrible at the job of leading people. And they would do some really toxic things. Like, one example of what they did, they had a direct report that they didn't like their leadership style. Even though this direct report was a high-performing leader, the team loved this high-performing leader. The team supported this high-performing leader. This leader had low turnover rate, but the CFO didn't like this leader's style. So the CFO asked the CEO for permission to reorganize all of their departments. And in the reorganization, the CFO asked the HR executive to redraft the job description for this high-performing leader that was doing so well that the CFO didn't like. So when they rewrote the job description, they put credentials and criteria in the job description that this current high-performing leader didn't have. Like, you had to have a certain credential or a certain master's degree of some sort if you wanted to stay in this role. And so after the reorg, the CFO went to this leader and says, hey, you can reapply for this job. I'm just reorganizing the team. Well, when the leader went to reapply for the job, she didn't meet the minimum criteria. Think about that. And everybody knew this was wrong, was watching it go down. And nobody said anything, including the CEO. This led to some serious turnover on that team. Ultimately ended up affecting the finances of the organization. So much so, they had to have a whole round of rifts and layoffs. So I'm telling you right now, supervisor mistreatment is real. This is probably one of the longest leadership lives that I've done in recent weeks, recent months, because we have to do something about this. And I'm telling you right now, if you want to stop supervisor mistreatment, you got to know the 5 unseen consequences that I've laid out and the 4 things that you need to do. Number 1, have clear policies against this kind of behavior. Number 2, you need to train and develop your leaders. Don't train them how to be managers. Teach them how to be leaders. Number 3, you need to have an open, communicative culture in your organization. And number 4, you need to hold people accountable. So there you have it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. Thank you for being a part of another Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. Everybody have a fantastic week. Take care.